Testes. Who caught that? Uh, all right, hi everybody. Dave Gonzalez here, founder of the Internet Marketing Party. And so thank you very much. Have you guys ever been to AUSOME before? Raise your hand if you've ever been to AUSOME. All right, so what I want you to know, if you're a regular AUSOME attendee, does it seem a little more lively and kind of upbeat today? I'll tell you why in a moment. But before that, I want to take a moment and acknowledge, hey Matt, I hadn't seen you. Anna Cummins back there, who is she makes it to where all I have to do is walk in and seem like I do things. So let's give it up for Anna Cummins, who runs this shizzle. Thank you, Anna. And obviously, I also want to take a moment and acknowledge our sponsors, and one of them is Capital Factory, who is responsible for the great venue that we have here. We get to, if you lean over, you get to see the Capitol right over there. Did you know it's made of paper mache? You guys are making me feel funny, but really it is. I'm competing with John Barry now. I look kind of Asian too. If this thing's being filmed, I gotta show it to JB and be like, JB, I'm coming for you. Let's see. Yeah, so our other sponsor is Internet Marketing Party, who paid for the beer. And so if you've never been to an Internet Marketing Party and you're here for AUSOME, the reason that I said that tonight's more lively is because one of our long-time loyal Internet Marketing Party attendees also happens to be our guest speaker tonight, and he's very popular, and everybody likes him. But I'm not just going to talk about that. What I'll say is, if you like the energy you're feeling in this part of the room, many of whom have come out to support our guest speaker tonight, then I highly recommend you come to Internet Marketing Party, which is normally $39 to get in. But if it's your first time ever going as an AUSOME member, just let Anna know and you can come for free for your first time. Just your first time. And this coming Thursday, not tomorrow, but next Thursday, we have our party. We usually do them the second Thursday of the month. And we've got Molly Mahoney flying in from somewhere in California to share with you how to monetize Facebook using Facebook Live videos. She's really good at it, and she's really funny, and she's about as extroverted as they come, and she's hilarious. So she taught me this one thing and you can try it tonight to see if you like. All you got to do is go to your Facebook and write the words Brussels sprouts, yes or no. And with in 10 minutes, I think I had 67 comments. So, and that's obviously, she teaches strategies on how to leverage that. But the first thing you need is engagement. It's just she teaches a bunch of different things on how to get your, people in your audience to be like, no, or yes, or like, and she's like, it's not just Brussels sprouts over and over. Well, you'll always know someone who's trained under Molly because if you scroll somewhere far down under Facebook, there'll be a Brussels sprouts post, and no matter how many times it happens, people jump in. It's like, yeah, people can't not do it. But anyway, so yeah, hope to see you guys at an internet marketing party sometime soon. But now moving on to our guest speaker. I wanted to get clear on some of the things that I want that would be great to share with you, because it's always nice when somebody brags about you instead of you bragging about yourself. But I was really impressed because I've known our guest speaker for about 4 years or so now, maybe more, and I didn't know some of the things that I found out. And he's been responsible for writing and sending emails that went out to over 1 billion people in niches like mindset and mastery, as well as health and fitness and the survival space and in the marketing space. He's also gone on to work with clients that he's approaching 250 million video views through the videos that he's helped coordinate, strategize, and write copy for. And on top of that, he's also coming up on, I think it was, here, I wrote it down on my notes so that I wouldn't forget in case I did, is $20 million in revenue for his clients in the work that he's worked on. So, you know, that's pretty impressive. And same as with Internet Marketing Party, we have a no pitching rule. But what I will say is, you know, Pete's the kind of guy that I asked him, I was like, if there was anything you could offer our crowd, if they're as impressed as I believe they are going to be, which I should say right now, Pete doesn't usually do public speaking. And he's a really outgoing and gregarious guy. But you remember the first time you did anything? How you felt? So what I'm going to ask you to do is just be really, really interested and engaging and laugh at all his jokes. and have some compassion, because this is the first, if not the one of the first times he's ever spoken publicly like this. Although, what I want him to hear, because I know he can hear me back in the green room wearing the green pants and the green Vans, is that he speaks publicly all the fucking time. He's done it every time I've ever been around him. So the only difference here is that you're paying even closer attention, which is what we all want, right? We all want to be paid attention to, so that's what we're going to do with him tonight, right? So with that, I'd like to welcome the giant Pete Hewitt. Come on now.
Hello. Wow, that is louder than I was anticipating. If at any point you can't hear me in the back, just frantically wave your arms at me, because I have a tendency to talk pretty quietly. So if you're struggling, just yell at me a little bit, or yeah. I just want to reiterate and say thank you so much to DG and his better half, Holly, for IMP and for AUSOME, and of course the lovely Anna for all that they do. I'd say about 90% of my actual friend group has been a result of IMP. And it's just been such a blessing on my life, and I'm going to try not to cry. I appreciate the warm welcome from DG as he's frantically trying to get me to raise the mic higher. You know, the thing about DG is that he has just such a huge heart and built this incredible community around IMP and other events like this. So I really, truly appreciate that. And today we're going to talk a little bit about empathy and how to leverage empathy to maximize conversions from your audience. Before that, tell you a quick little bit about myself. I am a native Austinite. Unicorn status generally gets me free shots at the bar, so I've got that going for me, which is nice. Other than that, Scotch is my go-to poison, Torchies are the best tacos, and I love you all. So, let's see if this thing works. Yes. Okay, so tonight I'm just going to go over some of the lessons I've accrued over the years working with different clients and on different projects. I believe that all of you will get at least a little something out of this, and if not, I'll try to keep it real quick and we can go back to boozing and schmoozing. So the overarching theme is empathy, and the reason for that is the number one thing that you can do to make an impact and propel your business forward is to find a way to resonate with your target audience, right? So at the end of the day, it's realizing that these people are just like you. They're going through struggles, right? They're taking it one day at a time, a lot of the time. And so when you can find a way to connect with those people in a real and conscious way, then no matter like which vehicle of delivery you use or what your core product offering is, then you're going to build a tribe, right? You're going to create brand evangelists, which is what everybody wants, whether they know it or not. So that's the thing I focus on with my partnerships and my clients, is figuring out how to take people from potential customers to past the point of conversion all the way to loyal as hell, right? Sorry, DG, if videographer is going to get pissed at me for cussing a bunch. So the thing I would like to frame going into this is a couple things here is, but show of hands, how many people here are running a business and aren't getting as many customers as they'd like, or aren't making enough sales, or don't feel like their message is hitting home? Pretty much everybody, right? There's always room to improve. And over the years working with different mindset mastery coaches and you know, launching a few products myself with some partners, what I've discovered is that you can't solve a problem with the same brain that created it. So the key to figuring out how to make a change, I've found, is to retrain your brain. Just accepting the fact that there's something wrong and that there has to be a solution, and you are the bottleneck for the solution. And that's okay, because you're going to get to the point where you understand what the solution is and figure out how to implement it, right? And so that's really what it all boils down to. You can listen to me drone on and on for hours, or go to attend all the webinars you want, or whatever. If you don't actually take that information, disseminate it, implement it, then it's useless, right? So that is the thing that I want to speak about first, is figuring out how to retrain your brain and looking at things through a different lens. And that lens that I think is most powerful is the one where you come to a place where you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Because you can't sell to them effectively if you don't understand their pain. All solutions are born out of a pain point, right? And we'll talk more about that later, but if you can't empathize with a single mom of 3 who's just gotten off a 14-hour day, or someone who can't pay rent next month, then how can you sell to them? And if you can't sell to them, then you can't help them, because if you truly believe in what you're selling, then you should be committed to that truth, which is that you're doing them a disservice by not selling them something that solves a pain. So at the end of the day, I think that's the most important consideration. Understanding that you are in the business of results. You're in a problem solver. So for me, it's a pretty pragmatic person, ironically giving a talk about empathy. But yeah, I definitely have an analytical mind. Spent the last, before I jumped into direct response marketing about 5 years ago, I spent 7 years doing operations, management, and logistics in the Southwest Division for Costco Wholesale. So that is freight, millions and millions and millions of dollars of freight every single day, and coordinating with everything that goes along with that, and handling employees and all of that fun stuff. So there isn't much empathy involved in that situation. It's numbers on paper, and I need this done, and I need it done yesterday. So that being said, and with those hopefully new lens over your eyes, let's dig into some slides. Oh, right. Verticals that I've operated in. Just to touch base a little bit more on that. The thing, like most of the slides here, I found these truths to be accurate across verticals, which I think is very important because what will work in one vertical might not necessarily work in another. So you're trying to isolate the principles of direct response that can be applied liberally no matter what you're trying to sell. If it's a $10 survival knife or a $10,000 coaching program, doesn't matter, right? You're trying to leverage the principles that are true no matter what, right? And so I found that the key to that is asking a shit ton of questions because everything in business is just a puzzle, right? And sometimes you're going to fail, sometimes you're going to succeed, and generally when it seems like the sky is falling, that's the best time to flip what seems to be the end of the world on its head and accept the phrase that you should fail fast and you should fail upward. Credit where credit is due to my friend Ron Lynch, the man himself, for that. But that was maybe the most impactful thing that I've ever been taught ever. Because you're always going to fail. You're always going to fall down. And obviously the cliche saying of the fucking getting back on the bike and all that, right, is important. But in business, especially when your livelihood is on the line or your family's or, you have a stigma or some kind of mental block like, oh, I can't fail. I can't let everyone around me who knows and loves me that I'm a failure, right? Ironically, all sales come from heavy-weighted emotions, right? So in order to do someone a service, you have to figure out how to persuade them to overcome an objection and alleviate a pain point. So for me, I've found that the only real true thing across all these verticals that I've operated in is that the only way to move forward and to serve the people in your audience that you're trying to serve, which is ultimately what you should be doing if you're marketing ethically, is ask a shit ton of questions because that's how you get to the root of how to serve them. In my experience, 95% of all the marketing mud that I throw against the wall falls, right? And it can seem like a very hard thing, and it can seem like something that would defeat you. But if you just accept the fact that most of your campaigns, most of your videos, most of your posts, most of your emails are going to fall flat, especially at first, when you're trying to cultivate a tribe, when you're trying to build brand awareness, then it doesn't sting as much. You don't take it personally. It's not an ego thing. It becomes okay, what lesson can I take from this, right? And I think that's the hand in hand for asking questions is, how can I be better tomorrow, just 1%? I'm not a huge 110% every day. I get the flu like everybody else, or don't really feel like working just like everybody else. Even if it's a project that I'm really passionate about. So I think there's a little bit of bullshit around the 110% thing. I think just trying to be better by just one simple way, what you would amount to 1% day over day is important. So figuring out what the day's lesson is, that is really important. So if you're not journaling in the morning or at night or recording your thoughts in some fashion, I would highly encourage you to do that, because having a documented approach to things, is really important, because you can't go back and learn and you can't reflect, right? I'm a big fan of the end of the week review process. I'm a big fan of 30-day reflections, to not only personally, but in business, because you have to figure out, okay, well, what's working, what's not. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? So if you're not reflecting on the success and the failures in your business ventures, then you might as well shoot yourself in the foot, right? Because you're never going to go anywhere. So, yeah, the definition of empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. When I first jumped into direct response, it was with a dear friend of mine, a former roommate, a guy by the name of Ian Stanley, who many of you know. British asshole, brilliant copywriter, all-around good guy. I had the good fortune to join up at a $20 million a year business that had a couple branches: water filtration, supplements, fitness, weight loss, a financial arm of the business as well, some sustainability. So I kind of dove right into the fire. And the problem with that at the time, albeit I didn't know it, was that I started seeing people as numbers, because I'd sit at the bar, which we're prone to do, and work at 1 a.m., and I'd load up emails for the weekend. So I'd bang out emails, 20 or 30 minutes, load them up, send them out, check the stats on Monday, and we would have generated 150 grand in revenue. So it kind of desensitized me to the fact that these are individual people when you're pulling in 100, 200, 300K a day in rev during some of the busier months and as things scaled. So, and obviously that's a direct result of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on AdWords and Facebook. But yeah, anyway, so, when it comes to retraining your brain, I think you really have to go through, and I don't want to get super woo-woo with it, but doing guided meditations to be able to take yourself out of where you are, closing your eyes, picturing, okay, this is what this single mom of 3 is going through. She doesn't have 40 minutes to watch her VSL. Like, it's not going to happen. Her video sales letter, are you kidding me? At 8 p.m. after she's worked 14 hours and trying to put the kids to bed and all this? Come on, forget about it. So it's the most common mistake that I see that people make, no matter what the price point, no matter what the venture, no matter what the vertical. The method of delivery, how you go about saying something, is, in this day and age, almost as important as what you're actually saying. So this is something that people kind of gloss over. They're just like, oh, well, I've heard I should be running Facebook ads, and I should be emailing, I should be doing a podcast, and all these different things, right? And they don't actually end up sticking with anybody. It doesn't resonate with anybody because it comes across as half-ass. And their inability to actually connect with the person they're trying to serve and sell to is totally clear. Like, it comes across as spammy and super salesy, right? And like I said, I'm a huge fan of selling. If you aren't selling, you've got a hobby, right? You don't have a business. So anyway, the part of that, what I call the vehicles of delivery, basically just the mechanisms that help you connect with people, get your message out there, start making the impact, and cultivating a tribe with which your message resonates, is boils down to, in essence, to conditioning. And having systems in place for each traffic source, and showing people the consistency, the fact that you are there, you're showing up, providing value for them before you even start selling them anything, I think is the best way to go about it. So if you're not doing that, I would highly, highly encourage you to take a look at how you're leading with value as opposed to just trying to make the sale, right? Because you'll end up making more sales when you are the guy that everybody flocks to, that is proven to be magnetic, that you have gravitas, right? I forgot to say earlier, if you have any questions, make a note on your phone or whatever, and we'll have Q&A after. So conditioning is super important. We'll talk about that in a bit, a little bit more, but basically there's a ton of different ways to go about this across different channels. So how you do it on Facebook is different than how you're going to do it with a YouTube channel, right? Or how you're going to do it with email marketing or messenger bots or SMS, right? So a lot of it really boils down to split testing, and like I said earlier, asking the right questions, because you can't come to a solution if you don't ask the right questions. You have to go through the process. You have to go through the logical exchange and the brainstorming and bouncing ideas off of people in order to come to a conclusion that is more than just the hunch, right? Because people's inclination is to trust their gut, which is fantastic and all, except for the problem that, like I said, 95% of all marketing falls flat. So it's really about finding the winner. It's about like sifting gold. You go through a bunch of mud just to find a few specks. So The Kool-Aid Man, one of my favorite characters from childhood commercials. I have no idea why this popped into my head when I was building the slides, but I mean, I know why he did, but it seemed super strange at the time. So if y'all recall any of the Kool-Aid Man commercials, they're usually like 20 seconds or so, Saturday morning, in between Saturday morning cartoons and that sort of thing, right? And like I said earlier, everything in this presentation is about gleaning, about garnering lessons and figuring out how to take those lessons that I've accumulated over the years, disseminating and implementing into your own ventures. So that being said, I know it is odd that there's a Kool-Aid Man on the screen. Not lost on me. So those 20-second ad spots for the little Kool-Aid packs are ridiculous. They're so stupid. You know, the kids in the cafeteria or on the playground will be screaming, doing this, that, or the other, and then, oh, it's time to get a snack, and Billy doesn't have a soda or a soft drink or whatever, right? And all the other kids are like, oh no, oh no, oh no, and then he busts through a wall with no regard for, you know, property or anything, and says, oh yeah! Just, you know, crushes it, and then all the kids start screaming, they're super happy, right? That is such brilliant marketing, and here's why. Because the kids nag their parents to buy them the product when they go to H-E-B or whatever. And they only do that because the level of excitement in the commercial is so inspiring, and it's also interwoven into their cartoon time or their video game time or whatever. At least in the 90s it was. So I'd be sitting there playing Atari or Nintendo with my brothers, and the Kool-Aid Man would come on, and just like all the other ridiculous commercials like Lucky Charms or whatnot, everyone would get excited, and what we'd immediately do is go run to my mom, bless her heart, and scream and demand and demand and demand and demand that we get more Kool-Aid. Because kids can be like that sometimes, maybe. I was an asshole as a kid, for sure. But the subliminal side of that is that you have a mental positive association with the screaming, the excitement, the interwoven element that is playtime or you know, video game time or whatever. And so that's why that brand has lasted all these years. In the era of healthier alternatives, there's still Kool-Aid packs. There's a 4-foot section. I was walking down the tea and coffee aisle in H-E-B the other day. There is still a 4-foot section for Kool-Aid, the 90 cent, 60 cent, whatever they are, packs of Kool-Aid, which are horrible for you. Horrible, and should be obliterated off the face of the earth. I love the Kool-Aid Man as much as the next guy, but they're terrible. The only way they've been able to survive this long is because of nostalgia. So people in their 30s and 40s now who grew up with the Kool-Aid Man that have kids are still willing to buy them pure sugar because of that, because they haven't changed the formula for their ad spots in 20 years. They're still the same. And they're okay with it because they look back fondly on those better days, right? So a couple lessons there, obviously. If you can, a great way to build brand loyalty over time is have a subliminal positive mental association, right? So obviously, there's tons of different ways to go about marketing. Certain forms work better for certain verticals, like survival. Use a lot of fear-based marketing, unfortunately. But health and wellness, you mostly talk about positive elements, right? Hey, you pre-frame, and you say, when you lose 90 pounds, this is how you're going to feel. This is how you're going to look. This is how confident you're going to be. And with that confidence, whatever. If it's a guy, she's going to want you. You're going to get that raise. Your boss is going to respect you. Your friends are going to like you better. Whatever it is, right? Most of the time, there's a little grain of truth in there, but sometimes can be total bullshit. So the real lesson there is the pre-frame for ad spots like this can be applied no matter what the commercial is, no matter what you're recording. If it's just a quick iPhone video to your audience, you can take those elements of direct response and say, okay, if it worked for the Kool-Aid guy 25 years ago, it can still work today because that brand is still there, and it should have been eradicated over a decade ago, for sure. So interesting tidbit there. the subliminal side of things, people have a negative association with the word subliminal. But if you're marketing ethically, you're actually aiding them on the scale of awareness, making sure that they understand the value of your brand, and you're helping them get to the point where they can say yes to your product offering, which is the only way that you as a business owner can serve them, right? You can't stay in business, you can't provide for your family, you can't live if you don't sell anything, right? That's not how businesses work. It's called nonprofits. Okay. I grew up super nerdy. This might surprise some of you. Oh, wow, that's way louder. And I have 3 brothers, so there's a whole lot of beating each other up, fighting for this, that, or the other, playing video games, you know, arguing over who gets the newest comic book edition, etc. Deadpool is one of my favorite characters, especially since the release of the newest films and the brilliance that is Ryan Reynolds, bless his heart, may he live forever. The thing that is just so damn brilliant about Deadpool, not only as a comic book hero, and I swear I'll tie this all into a direct response principle in a minute, but especially the newer films, is the fact that it's a blatant slap in the face to the archaic way that has always been done. And that is really, really important for, I think, just about anybody who's trying to sell anybody else something to understand. Because it's okay to emulate the big guys. If you're in financial and you want to emulate a big financial firm, great. If you're in survival and you want to do the same, great. If you're in health and wellness and you want to look up to the most jacked, healthiest dude on the planet, fantastic. But there is a point, and with certain brands and certain tones and voices, where you want to throw stones, right? And you want to be the guy that swims upstream, okay? So for me, Deadpool is the epitome of that in modern day film, right? He breaks through the fourth wall, obviously, all throughout the movies, where he talks directly to the camera and is snarky as hell and making, you know, jives at the studios and all that. And it's super entertaining and is grossed really well. So that's a tricky thing to translate to most businesses. The only way I've found success doing it is with physical products like under $250 price point, and here's why. Well, especially health and wellness products. Because you can use phrases like your new normal, or when you failed in the past, it won't happen to you again in the future. Like, this is totally different, and here's why, and it's going to be a new, better you, right? So that works really well with health and wellness verticals in particular, but kind of trickier if you're in like financial or something like that. Okay. This is a super useful exercise that I do for all of my clients and partnerships. Like I said earlier, again, not to be too woo-woo, but putting yourself in the headspace of the person you're trying to sell to is immensely valuable. And the to-do, if you will, for that action is to figure out what the encompassing pain points, like every single pain point that this person could possibly be experiencing, and list them all out, right? And then from there, you identify which ones are most powerful, which ones they're experiencing at which times, and which ones you think are going to immediately make them buy, because you can only focus on a handful, right? Otherwise, your marketing message is cluttered and discombobulated. So if they have like 10 pain points, you can address them on a sales page or in an email or whatnot, but eventually you got to focus on one or two, right? Those are going to be your nails in the coffin, so to speak. People often confuse benefits and features. You should never, ever, 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 and I can't say this enough, focus on the features of your core offering or your product ecosystem. You should always frame from a standpoint of the benefit that they are going to receive, because they're human beings and they don't care that the Dyson has the little doohickey that they don't understand. They care about the fact that they're going to have a clean floor and that the kids aren't going to choke on some Lego or whatever. So part of that exercise is trying to put yourself through a day in their shoes, right? Okay, when they wake up at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. or whatever, all the way to the point where they lay their head down, how do they act? If you are really getting clear on who your target audience is and who the avatar for their product ecosystem is, then that is a super helpful exercise, because it'll tell you how to communicate with them. Like I said earlier, single mom of 3 doesn't have time to watch a 40-minute VSL, maybe on a Saturday. If it's something that like her gal pal referred over to her, something that she found super intriguing, but just like a random scrolling through Facebook with a sponsored ad. That's why all these brands have so much trouble converting from cold traffic on GDN or Facebook or YouTube or whatever straight to a video sales letter, right? That's 30 or 40 minutes long, like a traditional commercial or infomercial rather. Because they don't know who you are. Maybe they've heard of your brand. Maybe they're even aware of the pain points, and maybe they are experiencing some of them. But in this day and age of instant dopamine release, where push-pin notifications are a thing, everybody and their mother can talk to everybody all the time, and you can't go 20 minutes without getting a text message or an email or whatnot, people get distracted. And when they get distracted and they go down the other rabbit holes, it's like being Alice in Wonderland, right? So the only way that you can solve that is by serving them through communication that resonates with them. And the way that I've found most effective and how I generated over 250 million organic video views is micro content. Some of the best people that I've ever seen do micro content is the only Reverend Jesse Elder and our boy Chad Walding of Native Path. Basically, iPhone videos. 1 to 2 minutes, minimal editing, and consistency is king in this instance. So they post them frequently, and they listen to the audience's feedback. Okay, you didn't like that video series? Cool. Well, I won't talk about that topic again. Or that's not the right pain point to address. Okay, so listening to your audience and asking them questions, just like you would ask a business partner or yourself or whatever about how to propel the business forward, it's equally important. You've got to ask your audience questions in different ways. You can't just ask them the same question in the same way with the same vehicle of delivery on the same platform over and over again, because you desensitize them, right? So at the end of the day, the goal is to convey as much value as possible. I'm trying to think of some of the most popular brands on the planet that have been around for a long time. Nike comes to mind immediately. If you buy Nike products, you buy Nike products, right? I know people who like wear only Nike, right? So for them, it's about some identity that they've created around this brand. Like, hey, in the example of Nike, I am this sports enthusiast, and I'm not buying some cheap shoes or some cheap drywear or whatever, right? So conveying the value up front is the best way that I've found to experience that brand loyalty, right? People still, like Nike's still one of the biggest companies on the planet. And the reason for that is because they consistently deliver high quality products. They put on events, they engage with their communities, they give back to communities through different charities, etc., right? I really, really hope there wasn't some Nike scandal recently. Okay. The pain scale. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but this is a great way to figure out which of the vehicles of delivery on which platforms you want to utilize to get your message out there, right? Because you can't create impact, you can't generate revenue, and you can't continue operating the business if you don't solve problems, okay? That's at the end of the day, if you sell something, your objective is to provide a solution for somebody that is experiencing a problem, right? So Pain scale, pretty straightforward. 0, they have no idea what the hell you're talking about. 1, they've heard about it maybe through a social media channel or from a friend, but that's about as far as it's gone. 2, it's affected somebody or maybe themselves in the past, but it's not at the forefront of their mind, right? They're not really truly aware of it, and they don't really care about it. And then so on and so forth, all the way up to, wow, I gotta find a solution right now, because this is ruining my life or affecting somebody I love. So having people self-identify where they're at on the pain scale is super valuable. Guys, cannot emphasize it enough, because if you're trying to sell them the sky's falling and the house is on fire solution, and they've never heard of your brand or even aren't really familiar with the ins and outs of the problem, back pain comes to mind. Okay, if you've got severe back pain, like you can't sit up straight, you can't work, you can't play with your kids, whatever, you'd pay just about anything to solve that problem, right? Because it's affecting you, like, especially if it's gone on for weeks or months, right? And there's no like immediate medical solution, so you try to numb yourself with whatever, and you scour the internet and you talk to all your friends about, okay, well, what if I try this posture or this stretching or whatever, right? If you try to sell them something they're not ready for because you haven't properly assessed where they're at on the pain scale, your conversions are going to be in the toilet. And that is true in every single one of those verticals I've operated in. Like, doesn't matter. If you're trying to sell them something they're not ready for, then you need to nurture them. You need to educate them. You need to provide them with content to absorb. You need to, whether it's Facebook groups or webinars or pre-recorded videos or emails or whatever, however you want to go about it, your objective is simply to get them to the point where they're ready to say yes, instead of trying to force them to the sale for a quick buck. Because the inverse is going to be true. They're going to tell you to go to hell, and they're never going to engage with your brand ever again. 9 times out of 10. All stats are made up on the spot. Okay, pain scale, the important thing there is assessing where they're at, right? And we talked about asking questions earlier, and this makes people uncomfortable, which is awesome. Here's why. Because people don't want to let you in, whether they know you well, whether you just met them, or whether they're a total stranger, right? They don't want you to see how vulnerable they are. They don't want you to see what they're struggling with. They want to put on the facade, right? The demeanor that all is well, everything's hunky-dory. So getting them to open up and tell you what they're struggling with is maybe the most important way that you can listen. And like we established earlier, if you listen better, you sell better. So some go-to questions for me: how far are they willing to go? Is it a $10 solution? Is it a $500 solution? And you can straight up just ask pricing questions, guys. I've done it a lot of times. Because you have to ascertain whether or not that they have an immediate desire for this, right? Where they're at on the pain scale, right? If they're ready to say yes, or if they need to be nurtured more. But you also have to make sure that your solution is right for them. You can't sell them a $10,000 solution if they have $1,000 in the bank, right? So that's where split test pricing models come into play, and you're trying to offer different solutions if you have a high ticket solution. But if you have something that's less than $500, it's usually pretty easy to play with the pricing and to get them to say yes if you just simply ask them, for all the people who have hit your page or opened your emails or interacted with your messenger bot or whatever, if they didn't say yes, just ask them why they didn't say yes. Do it a couple times in a couple different ways. I guarantee you will find the answer, and then you'll be able to craft not only the solution at the right price to get them to say yes, but you will also, that's like your entire content engine, which we'll talk about in a minute. But basically, they're going to give you, those responses are going to provide your content plays across the different channels, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. And all you have to do is simply ask, right? And obviously, the requirement there is that you have some people on your email list or some people that have visited your site or something. So the other big ones, go through real quick. Who else does this problem affect? A lot of people buy, especially impulse buys, are based on emotional responses, and especially when it comes to a loved one, right? If your kid's suffering or your partner is in pain, you'll spend every dollar you have to find the solution 100% of the time. If your kid's screaming and that's the kid that you love more than anything in the world, you're going to find a way. You'll raise heaven and hell. You'll get it done. So asking who else it affects is indicative and will help you come up with the right solution for those people. Okay. How does that make them feel? That's pretty self-explanatory. Which emotions? Again, pretty self-explanatory. But one of the cool tips that I picked up from the one and only John Morrow, probably the best blogger alive right now, is every single time he sits down to write a blog post, he lists who the blog post is intended for at the top. He writes out which emotions he's trying to evoke, and he writes how those people are going to benefit from his content. Brilliant and simplistic. So you can do that starting today for the rest of your life. If you just think before you create content or you create a core product, right? Before you go out and put something out into the world for people to consume or to purchase, if you just simply think, who am I helping? How am I helping them? And lastly, is this entertaining? Would I read this? Would my mom read this? Would my brother read this? Would my best friend read this or watch this, right? Infotainment is more important now than ever. Just selling people is going by the way of the dodo for most verticals. So people want to be entertained, and they want to be sold in an entertaining way. So pretty straightforward there. And then again, we talked about pre-framing how their life is going to be different, painting the benefits over features. Sorry, real tired. Okay, so always ask the questions at the end of the day. Woo. Okay, not trying to offend any religious people, but the 11th commandment is actually know thy customer. 75% of household purchases under $1,000 are made by women. The important thing to understand here is that men generally buy big ticket stuff, TV, some jewelry for the missus, a car, whatever, right? In a traditional family structure, I should preface. So a lot of the grocery shopping, a lot of the department store shopping that is, at least in the last 50 years, been done mostly by ladies. So that's super important, and it's still really relevant today, even though department stores are going the way of the dodo. And here's why. Because if your tone, the way that you're talking to people, and the vehicle of delivery you're using to communicate with these ladies, if that's your target demographic, is really important, because they won't respond to certain tones, right? So you have to communicate in a way that resonates for them. Also, aesthetics are a big consideration there, because if you had to pick between a really pretty looking product that's packaged well and has a lot of brand authority or leverage with another brand that you trust, and the product that does the same thing sitting on the shelf next to it has none of those things, which one are you going to buy, right? So understanding your demographics, the who, is obviously really big. You can't sell the same way to somebody that's 70 as you do who's 17, right? It's just not a thing. So I don't know many 70-year-olds that are really popping on Instagram and have a podcast and a YouTube channel. But I do know that sub 35, sub 40, especially lower price points, will buy mostly through social, whereas older generations generally, at least in most verticals, will buy through traditional long-form sales letters, video sales letters that are 30 or 40 minutes, email. or just straight web traffic, right? They do a lot of SEO. So, if you're targeting, if your product is perfect for somebody under the age of 35, make sure you're communicating on the right platforms, right? Instagram will be big for you, YouTube, podcasts, etc. Okay. Last major consideration here is think about how you want to be sold, right? And that's pretty indicative of how you're gonna sell, because nobody wants to get spammed, right? Nobody wants 10 text messages in a day from somebody trying to sell you something. They don't want an inbox full of emails. They want it done tactfully. They want it done respectfully, right? So golden rule principle basically for that. And so there's a time and a place to really, bring the hammer down, especially if you're doing like a flash sale or a promotion that's a limited time kind of situation. Then yeah, send a bunch of reminders, do it in an ethical way, but don't blow people up all the time because they're going to hate you for it most of the time. Okay, so everybody knows Becky. I'm sorry if anybody's named Becky in here, but this is nobody likes Becky. Okay. So a Becky is somebody that is going to ruin your conversion. So your point of sale is dependent upon an attention span. We talked about dopamine releases earlier. They have, especially my generation and the generation after, have shorter attention spans for sure. So the problem really becomes there's always going to be somebody texting or blowing up your Facebook Messenger saying, "Oh my God, did you see what Luke did? It's horrible." So watch out for Becky's when you're creating your micro content, because people have a short attention span, right? So it's better to stagger your content with different snippet pieces than to try to get them to sit down, focus, ignore all their messages, ignore the phone, ignore somebody banging on their door or whatever, and just watch your video or read 40 pages of a sales page, right? Okay, so we talked about this earlier. Brand evangelists, the ultimate goal for every brand, no matter what. There's very few verticals where it's a one and done situation. Like in the ideal customer scenario, you want them buy and ship from you 20 years later, right? So the only way you can do that is if you create a memorable user experience. And that's everything from how they interact with your site, your messenger bot, your email, your SMS, your different channels, Instagram, Facebook, etc. And like I said, we touched base on this a little bit earlier. If you focus on leading with value, then you're going to end up having people gravitate towards you. Which is why, in the romantic languages, the whole like blotting out the sun, you're my sun and stars kind of thing is a terrible depiction of how total and encompassing things should be, because black holes are actually the way you want to go. You want to be a black hole, wake up every day and think that you are a black hole. You don't want to go too wide if you have a bandwidth issue, if you're a solo entrepreneur, or you have a small team. You can't possibly manage effectively, without half-assing it, a killer podcast, YouTube channel, Facebook, messenger bots, email, SMS, etc. It goes on, right? It can be exhausting figuring out how to communicate with people and convey the value that you're trying to deliver. So making sure that the value perceived on the left hand is in line with the value delivered is paramount. Like, it's ridiculous how important it is, because they have a mental association with your brand and your value prop, your offering, right? So it doesn't matter what you're selling them, but if they don't think it's any good, they're not going to buy it, right? Pretty straightforward. But like I said, the goal ultimately is to, even after you sell them something, to get them coming back time and time again, right? Referring all their friends, sharing it on social media, etc. Okay, so ultimately your job is to give them what they want wrapped in what they need, because especially if you haven't gone through the process of asking them questions to figure out how to provide the right solution for their pain, it's kind of hard to give them what they want, right? They think they know what they want, but People are really dumb a lot of times. So sometimes you have to provide a better solution than they envision. Henry Ford, if he went around and asked people, well, what do you need? They'd say, well, we want more horses. Okay, well, we wouldn't have cars if he took that advice. So not great. Easy way to go about this, and something that I try to keep in mind, is do what you love and love what you do. And if you do that, then it's easy to be authentic and transparent, which is more prominent now than ever. And it's easy to have people gravitate towards you and to provide them value if you're passionate about what you do and what you're selling, right? If you love what you're selling and you truly believe that you're selling them something that's going to improve the quality of their life, which is the most important thing. Grandma test. How am I doing? I got like 10 minutes, DG, Anna? I got like 10 minutes, power through, okay. Grandma test. Everybody loves a grandma. Grandma test is super important for the very thing that we just talked about, which is if you wouldn't sell your product to your own granny, maybe you should rethink what you're selling. Is it high quality? Does it solve a problem? Are you marketing ethically? Does selling it make you proud? Are you happy doing it? Is this a venture you're passionate about? Does it have a net positive impact? And does it fall under the parameters of, without being too woo-woo, your alignment or your why, like the reason why you think you're serving these people? It is easy to feel good selling stuff, no matter what it is, when you can feel good about selling it. It's that simple, folks, I swear to God. State of your union. If you answered no to any of those questions, this is where you're at. Everything's on fire. I'm sorry to tell you this, but it is probably true. What that means is you need to take a super hard look at where you're at, not only with how you're creating content, the product that you're offering, how you're communicating it, but also just cold, hard, on paper, what are your assets, right? A lot of different ways to identify assets. It can be anything from, oh, I have an email list, or I have a following on this channel, I have this much money in the bank, I have this much inventory of a physical product, or if it's an info product, I've recorded all this. Or if it's a professional service, then I have this book of business and all these connections, right? Tons of different assets. The only way to really take a proper inventory and the state of your union is to figure out how you and your team are spending your time and energy. Those are the only two things you can never generate more of, ever. As far as I know, not a single person that's ever lived has ever done it. So, that being said, the best way that I've found to go about that is the $10,000, $100,000 rule. Real simple, 3 columns. You break down what you are doing every day, every week, every month, and put those to-do items in those columns, right? So then you can figure out, well, I shouldn't be doing this task, whether it's personal or business. I should not be writing blogs because I can write better mechanisms, hooks, stories, emails, right? And I'm not very good at blogs, to be honest. So, what factors are emotionally, mentally, physically draining you? Because those will force you to end up hating your business. I've seen burnout a bunch of times. I've experienced it. It super sucks, guys. Trust me. So that being said, if part of the asset inventory is figuring out what differentiators your brand offers, right? It's hard sometimes if you're selling just another survival knife or something. Okay, well, there's 10,000 of those, okay? So how do you make up with that? Well, you have crazy, kooky, wonky marketing assets, fun videos or events or something like that, right? Partnerships with somebody else that's doing awesome. So, yeah, that can also be an asset. And, you know, the real metric there is, do you feel like you're failing to hit your targets or that you're leaving money on the table, ignoring opportunities to create net positive impact and to give back to the community you're trying to serve? Harsh truth, in my opinion, nobody gives a shit about your brand, your product, unless it improves the quality of their life or is or someone they love or is emotionally tied to a cause that they care about. Results matter, vanity metrics don't. You cannot take Facebook likes to the bank. Trust me, I've generated several millions of them and I can't deposit any of them, and it sucks. The only real metrics, obviously the consideration is your margin here. If you gross $1 million, but you're only taking home 50K, you have a problem with your margin. You need to figure that out because you will never scale. So other than that, CAC, customer acquisition costs, if they're too high, then you can't scale. You can't pay to affiliates, or you can't spend appropriately on the correct advertising channels. AOV, average order value. Why focus on selling somebody a $50 product when you can sell them a $50 product and a $25 product and then upsell them 3 other products? That's your average order value. The culmination, the sum, the total of all the products that you are selling them immediately at point of sale. And then LTV, lifetime value of an acquired customer. And so that it has to do with brand loyalty, making them evangelists, and continuing to market to them ethically and in a way that serves them. Almost done, I swear. We did that. Okay. Dream 100, if you're not familiar with the concept, I'm going to go over this real quick because I know I'm almost out of time. I believe exponential growth occurs at the intersection of shareability and pairing shareable factors with content that is actually infotainment, because that's the best way, in my experience, to sell to them. When you're coming up with a Dream 100, it's basically just 3 tiers, right? To reduce customer acquisition costs, it's easier to cannibalize, leverage, however you want to say it, somebody else's audience, right? If they've got 1 million followers, hell yeah, I want to sell to those 1 million followers. Are you kidding me? So tier 1, the Oprahs, right? I'll never land those big fish. They'll never respond to my email or my phone call, and they'll never say yes to whatever I'm pitching them because they get pitched all the time. Still super important to identify. Tier 2, lesser influencers, maybe a couple 100,000 in following, or they have an email list or whatever, or a good network, right? Because sometimes it's just one handshake and your whole world changes. And then tier 3 is like local businesses, friends and family, stuff like that. So if you haven't already listed out the 3 tiers of the people, because you're selling to people and you're networking with people that can help you build your business, I would highly recommend that you take this. You can look up Chet Holmes. He's the inventor of the concept of the Dream 100, and it is the best approach to getting free or marginally low-cost traffic, which is what your product or service needs. You need to drive traffic in some way, shape, or form so that people see what you're offering them and can say yes or no, right? Basically what we just talked about, consistency is king when creating content, and that's part of the Dream 100 effect. You have to provide them value. You have to provide their audience value, and you have to fight to stay relevant. If you're unaware, if you're in business, you are literally in a battle every single day. You're trying to keep your business afloat. You're trying to grow. You're trying to pay your employees, whatever it is, right? You've got bills. You are constantly in a battle in that regard, but you're also in a battle because you're vying for the attention of everyone you're trying to serve. They've got all these different things pulling them 1,000 different directions. Remember Becky? Nobody likes Becky. Simple ways to do that: cross-promote, provide them with content, etc. This is one of the first videos that Ian and I ever did for the water filtration business we built. You can barely see it, but we were through the roof about it. At the time, that was 1.4 million organic views. And the preface, I don't have time to play the actual video, but we had a water filtration straw, kind of like a better version of the Life straw for camping and whatnot. And it had just rained in downtown Austin, and we went and drank water on the side of the street. Took us about 25 tries because of cars and whatnot. But it's such a pattern interrupt. I believe the title was Crazy British Guy Drinks Water Off the Street or something like that. But the important thing here that was crazy is we had 10,000 organic shares, which means this was so entertaining and so weird and gross that it made people stop and pay attention. They're called thumb stoppers, and it's what you gotta create. You gotta create content that is a thumb stopper. Other one, this is my business partner from last year. Collectively, we, over the course of like 9 months, we 5x'd his following from about 250,000 to 1.2 million across channels and generated over 200 million organic views. The main video, which is higher now, was a concept that we'd brainstormed on probably for about 3 months and ended up generating, at least at that time, 88 million organic views. And the exciting thing about that is over 1 million people shared that video, which it was crazy. So the main thing, tying back to the Dream 100, is that influencer pools are the key to exponential organic growth. You can pay for traffic on any channel all day long and you'll break the bank unless you've got your shit really dialed in. But aligning yourself with brands, people that have assets, influencers that you can share content with, that you can leverage their audience to where you're getting basically free traffic, is 100% the way to go. So make sure you look up Chet Holmes and take a look at the Dream 100 effect if you haven't done that already. And I swear to God, I'm almost done. Okay. The last major thing is multiple touch points. We talked about this. If you don't nurture them properly and you're not bringing them on a user journey, you can't sell to them properly. If you can't sell to them, you can't serve them. But too many people make the mistake of pushing immediately for the sale when they should understand that they might engage with your brand in some way, shape, or form over some channel 30, 40, 200 times before they ever buy anything from you. And that's okay, because they can still share stuff. They can still be eventual brand evangelists. They can talk to their friends about you, and they can enjoy and absorb your content. So it's totally okay not to hammer people to death like we talked about earlier, trying to get a sale. And we talked about that a little bit. Quick tips. Maybe just snap photo for anybody, because I'm running out of time. Always be split testing. Make sure there's a strong and clear call to action on every page in every element. Do you want them to go visit a blog? Do you want them to buy something? Do you want them to read an email? Do you want them to watch a video? Make sure you have strong calls to action, and understand that over 80% of traffic for most verticals is on mobile. So you need to make sure that it's mobile friendly, that it's readable, especially if you're selling to the older generations or people, you know, even in my age bracket who are starting to lose their eyesight. And one of the most important things there is always assume your assumptions are incorrect. We talked about this earlier with 95% of marketing falling flat. Fun and memorable campaigns that you can look up, and we can talk about more later if you'll want to chat or during Q&A. The old school, Old Spice commercials where it's like 20-second ad spots where it's every other second is just a shirtless dude on a horse or in a volcano or whatever. Brilliant subliminal messaging. And then this is the just absolute genius piece from the Harmon brothers, who are some of the most creative guys on the planet. For the brand Squatty Potty, they did Poopery, they did Russell Brunson's work, and a whole bunch of others. So we can chat more about that at length. And that is all I have. Thank you. Sorry if I was talking really fast. Absolutely. Okay. Somebody just stand up and start talking.
So I'm in I kind of joke and say that I'm a drug dealer because I'm in the cannabis industry with CBD. And
Sure.
In terms of services, block us from, creating content in the ads. What do you think some loopholes or traffic channels might be to those blocks?
So, I'm glad you asked that, because gentleman back there and I are probably going to be going into the CBD space together, and I understand how difficult it is. You really can't do any kind of advertising, as you know, in any way, shape, or form for something like CBD. So the only way that I found that you can do it is to get the assets, right? Ethical bribes, lead magnets, get their email, their SMS, messenger bot, retarget them with other content pieces that are just straight content, and then soft sell, hey, link back to the source home site instead of actually selling them something, which can get you in more trouble.
One of my thoughts was to buy a nutraceutical company and distribute it close to cost to get the traffic, and then convert with the second offer for CBD. Is that a good backdoor?
If you can swing it. We'll have to chat more. It's so subjective, but you and I can chat after, if that's cool. This gentleman.
So you talked in one of your beginning slides about condition your audience. Could you expound on that just a little bit more?
Sure. So people like consistency and they like regimen generally, right? So if they're used to getting a Sunday mailer, or read the Sunday paper, for example, is a timeless example, you should sell to them at the times or provide them content at the times that they're used to. Because then they know at 12 you know, during lunchtime, I can go sit with my headphones in and watch this Facebook Live. Or at 9 o'clock, I'm getting this email. Or they always run this kind of promo on the weekend, right? So it's a good way to build consistency so your brand doesn't get drowned out, because you've got competition no matter what you're selling, unless you're a new emerging tech and you're going to get knocked off like right away. So you got to understand that there's 500 other guys who will sell to the person you're trying to sell to if you don't. And we talked about doing people disservices, and nobody wants that. So.
You talked about value content a lot, and how it's important to provide value and not always be pitching. When should and when shouldn't content have a call to action in it?
Sure. So I am of the opinion that it depends on the vehicle of delivery. So for email, for example, I always soft pitch. Like, P.S., hey, have you checked this out? Even if it's not like, get 50% off, right? But it still drives them to a sales page or, you know, an e-commerce store or something, right? Over Messenger, you have to be real careful, and SMS as well. And so generally, you don't want to make the sale inside or through text messages or through like a Facebook Messenger program or something like that. What I prefer to do and what I've seen work really well is pushing people back to a sales page or a embedded content page to where they can engage, but you're still controlling the user experience, because the principles of direct response are based on controlling user experience, because Becky, right? And because Alice in Wonderland, and there's cat videos and YouTube to go play around. So if you don't put them on a page where their only binary option is, yeah, I want to engage with this content, or yeah, I want to buy something, then you're only shooting yourself in the foot. You have to only give them two options, right? So I would say always drive them back to a page where you have control and where you can retarget and you get the data from Google Analytics or whatever you're using.
First of all, awesome presentation.
Thanks.
You talked about this concept of micro content, which I love. It'll give you a lot of relief in creating like 2-hour podcasts, which I also love. But how often do you recommend posting, first of all? And second, what would be your #1 tip on figuring out what channel to post on?
Okay, so demographics. First thing here, if you're selling to sub 40, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, podcast. If it's old, post 40, then email, direct to long form or VSL, most effective. Here's the best tip I can give you for this, which is simply that, especially if you're trying to Dream 100 or build up an influencer pool, ask them for content, right? And then just interweave some 2 to 3 minute videos from you a couple times a week. But if you don't have that at your disposal, you can shamelessly share other people's content that you think is super valuable and then do the same thing. But you might have to increase the interwoven 2 to 3 minute videos. You might have to do it once or twice a day. But like I said, some of the guys that are generating 30, 40, 50, 100 million a year in rev simply use iPhone videos, like 1 to 2 minute, especially in the health and wellness space. Yeah, I do a morning and a night. Like I said, build the consistency so they know when they're getting stuff. Right.
Did you say it's okay to just have, if you find one pain point?
Yeah, so the exercise that I was talking about earlier is to try to find a way to put yourself in their shoes where you can, if there's 10 possible pain points that you've identified, all of them, or as many as you possibly can. And you can ask other people that operate in the space that you're in, or people you respect that might have some experience and insight. But at the end of the day, most of the effective sales letters and video sales letters and micro content channels are focus on 1 or 2 major, most prominent pain points.
What were you doing when you had your first major breakthrough in your direct response marketing?
When I realized that empathy was the key, and figuring out that other people are just going through the same shit you're going through, and that they like to be entertained. Comedy sells as well as sex, guys. It boils down to that. If you make somebody laugh, they're more likely to buy. If am I allowed to use the word arouse on a chat? If you arouse them in some capacity, sexual or otherwise, if you pique their interest mentally or they think your product's sexy or whatever, then that always works.
What are some of your favorite tools at the moment, whether it's the Messenger chatbot or some like AI, what are your favorite tools?
It depends on the product offering, but Messenger is great. Right now, it's kind of getting more restricted, but when Rob and I were getting all those views, we were getting 90+% opens in Messenger, and click-through rates for whatever we were posting upwards of 50%. We sent out probably about 300 messages in 4 months, and that was pretty much the average. So it definitely beats email, but the problem with something like that is you don't have control of that asset. Facebook could ban your page, and you're totally screwed. I know a guy who spoke at ManyChat conference, which is the main messenger tool. He lost 100,000 subscribers on his messenger program because they banned his page because he didn't see a policy update. So he exported the PISDs, the Facebook contact, through the API key, and basically said, okay, well, I can use this for retargeting and to run traffic, but I can't direct message them anymore because the prereq of the messenger programs is that you have to be currently subscribed. So he was super screwed. So I'm always wary of putting too much stock in any one platform. I'm a huge proponent of diversifying your assets. Because but not going too wide to where you understand, okay, I'm spending this much time on email, this much time on YouTube, this much time on Messenger, to mitigate the risk in case something happens to one of your rev streams, if that makes sense.
So how do you get sexy and arousing TV?
I think I better talk about that not over the microphone, but we can chat after. Anybody else?
Okay, so I'm Krista Beck, and I help.
Hi, Krista. I know you.
Love again.
Whoop, whoop.
I want to set it up because it's part of the question. So I have a powerful process that helps single men and women be able to connect with quality people that have long-term potential, right? And so in terms of, so that's what I do. I have a program and
Sure.
I have coaching. Someone gave me advice once, and I've really been kind of like on the fence with it. They said, just share everything in your program. Just put it out there. Put it on social media. Create content with every little thing, every little secret thing in your thing. And I'm always like, but I'm giving away all the goods. What's your thought on that?
I would not do it, but my experience is that you should be generous in the value that you deliver, but your purpose as a business is to sell to these people, right? And tying it to charity angles and community development projects, etc., is fantastic, and I think every business should do that in some way, shape, or form. But if you give away the farm in the day and age of dopamine release, instant gratification, people will use you.
Yeah, that's what I feel. I feel like I can tease them with it a little bit.
100%.
Give them everything.
But I have seen it work. But the times I've seen it work, generally big brands, like guys that have hundreds of thousands of visitors a month, that sort of thing. And to where they already know, well, I can go customer acquisition costs. I can spend $500 to acquire a customer because I know the lifetime value of this customer is 10 grand over a 3-year period. You probably don't have that data unless you have some secret business I don't know of where you're generating hundreds of thousands of monthly visitors. If so, then we should definitely talk. We should talk anyway because I love you. Any other questions? Anybody else? We can connect after on the internet machine through Facebook, or I can give people my number or sit here and chat until they kick us out, or at a bar, which is where I will be after this. Probably the one downstairs or at CU29. So we'll figure that out, and I will yell at the room about where I'm going in case you want to talk about whatever it is that you have going on. So I'm super glad I didn't have a nervous breakdown or throw up here.